Good morning, everyone. The chair is just hello.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. For those that's waiting online, I just want to let you know that the chair is just engaged in a matter and he will be about 5 minutes late. Thank you.
Colleagues, sorry I'm a bit late. I was attacked by the City of Cape Town traffic, and then 4 of our elevators are not working. But I suppose traffic is a good problem because it means the city is busy. It was a bit ironic that I was waylaid by a black motorcade coming from the Newlands area. I was very tempted to just drive behind them, but I would have been arrested by the traffic officer that pulled me over. My name's Gillian Bosman, and a very warm welcome to our colleagues from the Auditor General, as well as Internal Audit. A warm welcome to Ms. Wasima Kamish Ahmed, our Procedural Officer, and a very warm welcome to all of you to the annual report meeting of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. I'm going to ask members to introduce themselves, just for the record, and then we'll go over to the colleagues from the Auditor General to introduce themselves. And then we'll ask any members of the public in the chambers. I see we've got some people up in the gallery. Welcome. But we'll start with the introductions of the members with the newest member. And on behalf of everybody here in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament and the chairperson, myself as the chairperson of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee, Member Michaels, we welcome you, and we'll ask you to start introducing yourselves, and we'll go backwards to the Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chairperson, members, officials. My name is John Michaels. I'm from the NCC. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to the AG. My name is Ayanda Barnes. I'm a member of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, all honourable members, the AG and officials. My name is Wendy Kaiser-Philander, and I'm a member of this committee.
Morning, Chairperson. Dave Bryant, member of the committee.
Morning, Chairperson, colleagues, and the professionals, and to our guest. I'm Member Boyson, and I'm an alternate member of this committee.
We'll now go over to the team from the Auditor General.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, and to the public. My name is Sangita Callan. I'm from the AGSA.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to the honourable members and to the public. My name is Unati Mngangani from the Auditor General.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, and good morning to the public. I'm Avika Nankamar from the Auditor General.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Andrew Davids, and I'm the chairperson of the Audit Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are all starting to become very good friends because we've seen each other very often for the last couple of weeks. To the gentleman at the back, if you could just introduce yourself as well.
Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Stanley Suma. I'm in the office of Honourable Member John Michaels.
Well, welcome to you. Can we go to those colleagues online? I see there are members online. Are you able to please introduce yourselves?
Good morning. My name is Benedicta van Minnen, and I'm a member of this committee who got it into my head this meeting was virtual, so I do apologize.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Laurie Constable. I'm an alternate member for this committee, and I'm standing in for Member Petrus. Thank you.
Are there any other colleagues online?
Morning, Chairperson. Member of the Audit Committee.
Sorry, I was not able to hear any of that. Are you able to repeat?
Smart Khan, member of the Audit Committee.
I think I heard Mr. Khan from the Audit Committee.
Parliament, yes.
Parliament from the Audit Committee. Thank you very much. Wasima, have we received any apologies besides noting the apology from Member Petrus and Member Constable standing in as an alternate? Okay. Member Constable, if you could just make sure that we get the necessary paperwork confirming from Member Petrus that you are his alternate You can send that through to Ms. Kamish Ahmad in the next coming days as you get it. But we'll get started. Colleagues, the purpose of today's meeting and the first part of the meeting is for us to get a briefing from the Auditor General, and I have received a request for that meeting, part of the meeting, to be held in camera, to be a closed meeting. So generally, we don't close the Parliamentary Oversight Committee meetings, but I did receive the request beforehand, and I've indicated to Ms. Kamish Ahmad that I will table that request to the committee. So with your guidance, I'd like to get an understanding whether the members of this committee are happy with us keeping the Auditor General section of the meeting a closed meeting, and then we open the meeting again as soon as the AG has done their confidential briefing, taking into account that one of the big celebrations of this annual report is that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament has received its 11th consecutive, I don't like the word clean audit because clean indicates the absence of dirt. And I think there's always dirt everywhere, especially if you're cleaning your own house. But that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament has done very well in the last 11 years. And when I say very well, I mean exceptionally well in terms of making sure that its 3 layers of assurance are in place for clean audit. So I'm not quite sure if there's anything specific that's confidential, but the request for a closed meeting came, and my initial reaction was no. And Ms. Kamish Ahmad said no, the AG begged for a confidential briefing. And I said, okay, I'm not sure why, because it's only good news that I've read, but now I'm quite interested, so I'll put it to the members. Over to you.
Thank you, Honourable
Sorry,
Chair.
Chair, you said you're putting it to the members?
I think Ms. Callan just wanted to make some input before I do that, Member Bryant.
Honourable Chair, I don't think we have anything that is of such a nature that we would have really pushed for a confidential or closed session. For me, I think it is something that we would be comfortable to comply with the procedures of this committee.
Perfect. Members, then there's no need to have a closed section. We'll continue with the practice as we do in the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. Just for background, for those of you in the public, welcome to everybody else. Every other standing committee of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament operates using the rules of order. This standing committee uses both the rules of order as well as a piece of legislation called FAMPLA. And FAMPLA does not make provision for this committee to be audited by the Public Accounts Committee because we are supposed to be independent from the rest of the operation that we have that we oversee. So generally, we do not have a closed session. We don't have a scoper session this afternoon for this committee as well, just for background. So members, if you are happy, I'm happy for us to go straight into the presentation by the AG.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members and everyone in attendance. It gives us great pleasure to bring to you the Western Cape Provincial Parliament's audit outcome for the year ended 31 March 2025. As the Honourable Chair had mentioned, this audit was done in terms of FAMPLA. So I will hand over to Unati, who will then take us through the detailed presentation. Through you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would like then to go straight into to start from page 3 of the presentation. I'm assuming that.
We're just going to ask Ms. Kamish Ahmad to flight the presentation just for the benefit of the guests visiting us in the gallery. We've all got copies of it, and it's also included in the annual report in terms of the detail. But we're just going to make sure that it's on the screen as well. There we go. Please go ahead.
Chair, do you require us to go through the presentation page by page?
No, Ms. Kamish Ahmad is quite adept at figuring out which slides you are on and what the content is. She's not just an expert at this committee, but she's also a resident budget expert. So she knows this back to front.
Thank you, Chair. Then I'll go then straight to page 3 of the document, which is the accountability ecosystem. Chair, with the AGSA's mission of shifting the public sector culture through insights, influence, and enforcement, we do acknowledge that every stakeholder has a role to play in shifting the public sector culture. It cannot be something that is done by the AGSA alone, and we do indicate in the diagram the role that the oversight committees play in shifting the public sector culture. And then on page 4 of the document, which then indicates then the audit outcome of Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So they are commended for maintaining a clean audit outcome for the 12th consecutive year, Chair. So we do then, our key message to the legislature is that they must continue to maintain and improve its current systems of and controls so that high standards of performance and accountability is upheld. This is to ensure that effective governance practices is maintained in support of the legislature's oversight function and strengthening public trust. So we also then indicate that by implementing the recommendations aimed at addressing root causes relating to non-compliance with procurement laws and legislation, the legislature will be able to maintain the risk of material findings and maintain its clean audit outcome. So page 5 of the document is just demonstrate the 5 consecutive years that the WCPPS was able to maintain the clean audit outcome. And then on page 6, which is the key focus areas that we also report on the audit, we do indicate that we did not identify any compliance matters to report. On page 7, Chair, we then do indicate the 2 programs that we selected for audit, which is Program 2, Parliamentary Support, and Program 3, Public Engagement. So these 2 programs are very key they indicate the mandate of WCPP. And then on page 8 of the document, then we then indicate that the annual report does include information on reported achievements against plain targets and provides explanations for over and under achievements. So we do indicate that for program 2, 25% of the targets were not achieved. And then we then do indicate that the 2 sub-programs where the targets were not achieved. And you will note here that the indicators do look similar under both programs, but that is because then it's under different sub-programs, but the indicator is the same. Is already indicated on page 9, because they received a clean audit, we did not identify any significant internal control deficiencies. And then our summary of key recommendations to the legislature in order for them to maintain this clean audit outcome. We then recommended that they provide oversight over compliance with the legislation to ensure that compliance reviews are strengthened. And we also then recommending to the legislature to assist the sector in finalizing the necessary frameworks relating to performance against predetermined objective. This framework to be prepared and adopted by the sector for implementation in the 2026-27 financial period. financial. 2026-27 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 financial. 2026- And in terms of material irregularities, we do then indicate that we did not identify any material irregularities in the current year, and we did not identify any in the previous years as well. And then the last page, Chair, then this is then our request to the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. In line with the oversight mandate, it's encouraged to follow up with the Speaker on implementation of committee's resolutions. Regular follow-ups will strengthen oversight by enabling the committee to monitor progress and assess the adequacy of interventions, thus promoting a culture of compliance and good governance within the legislature. So this recommendation, Chair, is just to ensure that any recommendations that are made by the POC are followed up and they are elevated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we're going to go straight over to Mr. Davids to also just give us an overview of his input. So Mr. Davids' report would be included in the annual report, but you also have a copy in front of you as well.
Thank you, Chairperson and honourable members, colleagues. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee on the report. I maybe just wish to start by indicating that the committee has gone through a bit of restructuring. So in the year under review, we had 5 members, and through a restructuring process, the committee was consolidated across the province, and we ended up with 4 members in our cluster that has oversight over the legislature. Of those 4, I'm the one that remained from the 5, so there has been continuity. I just wanted to clarify that and bring that to the committee's attention. This is my first year as audit committee chairperson as well. Then, chairperson and members, in terms of the audit committee makeup, I can confirm that we were adequately capacitated in respect of our terms of reference, and we also had the appropriate skills and experience to fulfill our mandate for the year under review. In terms of the internal audit function that reports functionally to the audit committee, the audit committee approved 3 assurance engagements for the year, all of which were completed. We monitor the action plans agreed to by management on a quarterly basis, and in terms of follow-up actions, we are satisfied with the feedback we receive from management on their progress in terms of these actions. In terms of combined assurance and the internal control system, we are satisfied with the continuing progress in these areas, and I confirm that we have fulfilled our responsibilities in terms of our mandate. Then, Chairperson, in terms of the external audit and the Auditor General's report, we met with the Auditor General to discuss the report and to ensure that there are no unresolved issues that emanated from the regularity audit. Corrective actions on the detailed findings raised by the Auditor General are monitored by the Audit Committee on a quarterly basis. Chairperson and members, we therefore concur and accept the AGSA's opinion regarding the annual financial statements and propose that these audited annual financial statements be accepted and read together with their report. Furthermore, Chairperson, I confirm that we met with the Speaker and the Secretary to discuss any concerns from their side in respect of the reports, and none were raised. However, we have received the necessary assurances that all recommendations will be addressed, and we'll monitor this on a quarterly basis as part of our mandate. On that note, Chairperson and honourable members, I want to conclude the briefing, and I just once again want to commend the legislature on achieving, I won't use the word clean, I'll say unqualified audit with no findings for the 12th consecutive year, as I understand it. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Davids, and thank you very much for the AG also for that comprehensive presentation. It's good that members of the public are able to hear the good news straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Colleagues, I'm now going to open up for any questions of clarity or any comments from members on both the input delivered by the Auditor General as well as Mr. Davids from the Internal Audit Committee. If you could indicate whether you have any questions. I'll go to the colleague online first. No fish to bite. Colleagues in the chambers. Honourable Bryant.
Chair, I suppose it is important for us to note the outstanding results and the clean audit outcome, 11th in a row, and also to thank the Office of the AG for their hard work in putting this together for us. Only thing I will note, Chairperson, is on the final page, there is a request to the Parliamentary Oversight Committee of the presentation to follow up with the Speaker on the implementations of our committee resolutions. I suppose that's something for us to note going forward, probably not only in this committee, but in other committees as well, to ensure that when we make resolutions, we follow up on those as well. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to ensure that we do that. But all in all, thank you very much and very pleased with the results.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's as difficult as it is for us to juggle, as we are 24 members in the backbenches, and we cover 15 committees. I don't know how we do it. I don't know how Honourable Barnes does it, but I struggle just to make sure that I get to my meetings and follow up. So it's commendable that the members are also still able to follow up and ensure that the WCPP does what it's supposed to do. But I did see Honourable Barnes's hand.
Yes, Chair. Perhaps just a comment. From your inputs that you indicated earlier, the unqualified and clean, it's not a question. It's not a question at all. Just for comfort for myself, as I'm sitting here, Chair, I'm aligning myself with the Chair there when he says this clean word, it's very heavy. But when you say unqualified also, you can't say there are findings. You must help me here as the AG. There are no findings. Correct? Is this what the AG is saying? But there might be issues. I'm not fishing for something. I'm not looking for anything. How do you separate clean and unqualified, just on layman's terms, for a person like me where I'm sitting? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Maybe if I could join the Honourable Barnes and ask yes, so we've got 12 clean consecutive audits. The report does flag underperformance in Programme 2, if I'm reading it correctly, specifically around committee support and the quality of Hansard. Maybe, are you able to elaborate how performance can be unsatisfactory in those core areas without triggering a formal finding? Just in terms of the reliability of the information. I think maybe that ties in with what Honourable Barnes is asking as well.
Thank you, Honourable Chair and Honourable Member. So let me start with the first one around the clean versus the unqualified. So in audit terminology, if matters that are not material enough to impact the fair presentation of the set of financial statements that have been put forward to us, we use the term unqualified. So there was nothing that came to our attention that was of significant nature that would render the fair presentation of the financial statements incorrect. So it is pretty much audit terminology. So unqualified means that I, in fact, did not find material misstatements in the environment. We use the concept of materiality in audit of financial statements, but also of compliance with laws and regulations. And we only audit compliance with laws and regulations that impact from a financial perspective and procurement perspective. And you'll see in our auditor's report there's an annexure which lists all the legislation that we audit. And lastly is the audit of predetermined objectives and outcomes that is reported in the annual performance report. In there, we also utilize a concept of material misstatement. So if there's something significant and that is material, that will then be put into the auditor's report for the attention of the public. So I can confirm for you that the auditor's report that we see in front of us in terms of WCPP indeed did not have any material misstatements in the financial statements, nor any significant material matters under compliance with laws and regulations, as well as predetermined objectives. To link it to the percentage achievement of the targets, you'll see that in our auditor's report, we also indicate the utilization of the budget against the achievement of the targets. What we audit is we audit reliability of performance information that has been reported. We select specific indicators. So we even tell you which programs we've selected. And in those programs, we identify indicators that are significant to the core mandate of the legislature, and we then test it against accuracy, validity, and completeness, meaning that whatever has been reported to have been the achievement in the report has been validated against supporting documentation, and we do it on a sample basis. And we check completeness to say whatever documentation has been gathered through the systems and processes, in fact, confirm that it has been reported as such. We unfortunately do not audit the actual performance. So the auditor's report does not cover any shortcomings around the effectiveness, efficiency, and cost effectiveness of achievement of a target. But we can confirm for you that, in fact, what has been put into the report is, in fact, accurate, valid, and complete. I hope that helps.
Very much. I don't see any other hands. I don't see any follow-up hands, so that is good news, always in Parliament when nobody has any questions. That means we're all satisfied and we all understand. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much for the presentation. And also I want to say thank you to the coordinator at the Auditor General for the coordination. My office deals with making sure that sort of all the meetings happen. And I'm always very impressed dealing with the AG's office because it's one of the few government departments at a national level that plans 4 months ahead of time. And also to Mr. Davids, welcome to our little ecosystem of legislative oversight. It's quite exciting. It's not as boring as most people make it sound, because we are really involved in the nuts and bolts of how governance happen. And we've got a really good sort of team in this committee making that go forward. So colleagues, with that said, we are going to break until 9 a.m. and we will reconvene with the WCPP leadership at 9 a.m. in the chambers. I think Ms. Kamish Ahmed has arranged for some refreshments in the members' lounge, tea and coffee. So you're more than welcome to help yourself to some tea and coffee, and then we'll be back at 9 o'clock for the engagement with the leadership of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament.
Chair, can I just check, can we leave our things in the chamber?
Yes, you can, and if anything goes missing, it becomes our responsibility as POC to find it. again, colleagues, and a very warm welcome to everybody on my right to the second part of the annual report deliberations of the annual report of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. We dealt this morning with input from the Auditor General as well as the Internal Audit Committee. Members have already introduced themselves, but just for the benefit of the members of the public who are joining us today, as well as for the new members to this committee, I'm going to ask that our guests in their own home please introduce themselves, starting with the Executive Authority.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Dalen Mitchell, and I'm the Speaker.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues, and a welcome to the Honourable Michaels from my side as well. And good morning to all that's in the gallery. I'm Regan Allen.
Good morning, Chairperson, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Honourable Members and colleagues. The name is Rashida Beg. I'm the Secretary for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Nicole Peterson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Dawood Jawuddin, Manager Finance.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honourable members and colleagues. Vernon Titus, Director, Institutional Enablement.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, Speaker, Deputy Speaker. I'm Margot Goldstone, Director, Strategy.
Good morning, Chair and members. Irma de Lange, Senior Officer, Strategy.
Good morning, Chair and members. Lubabalo Stemele, Director, Parliamentary Support Services.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Craig Mattia, Directorate Strategy and Institutional Oversight.
Good morning, Chair and members. Blanche Cancross, Internal Audit.
Good morning, Chair. Anissa Biardin, Internal Audit.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members and colleagues. Yanni Ace, Speaker's Office.
Good morning, Chair and members. Lorica Elliott, Speaker's Office.
Good morning, Chair and members. Ridwan Babu, Knowledge Management and Information Services. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. My name is Romeo Master, Manager Plenary Support.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. Good morning to the community up there. My name is Temba Nolusu. I'm the Manager, Safety Security Precinct and Sergeant at Arms. Thank you.
Morning, Chair and members. Kobe Skricker, Manager ICT.
Good morning, Chair. Temba Kesa, Manager PEO.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. The name is Mario Sassman. I'm the Manager, Committee Support.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Carolyn Prakasan, Manager, People Management.
Good morning, James Retief, Manager, Stakeholder Management and Communication Services.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Sunal Fouchier, Public Engagement.
Good morning, Genevieve Beckham, Manager of the Office of the Secretary.
Good morning, Chair. Usman Alexander, Supply Chain Management. Thank you.
Are those all the colleagues online? I think we've covered everybody. Colleagues, we're going to get straight into it. I'm going to hand over to the Speaker for any opening remarks, and then straight after that to the Secretary. And then the WCPP has indicated that they have prepared a presentation. Sorry, Member Kaiser Philander, would you like to introduce yourself again? The members earlier did introduce themselves when we opened the meeting, but just for the record, and because Member Michaels is a new member, perhaps let me restart the meeting and allow the members to introduce themselves. For those of you who don't know, I'm Gillian Bosman. I'm the chairperson of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. I'm going to hand over to the first member over here to introduce themselves, and then we'll go over to the members online after all the members in the chambers has introduced themselves.
Sorry. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to the members of the public and to our learned officials. I'm Memory Boyson, and I'm an alternate member of this committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, officials, members of the public. My name is John Michaels, and I'm from the NCC. Thank you, the new member.
Good morning once again, Chair. Good morning, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and to management. My name is Ayanda Barnes, member of the Standing Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, a second time, Chairperson. Honourable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Madam Secretary and the SMT, honourable members, my name is Wendy Kaiser-Philander and I'm a member of this committee.
Morning, Chair. Dave Bryant, member of the committee.
Colleagues, members joining us online, please can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, I'm Benedicta van Minnen. I'm a member of this committee.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, Speaker, Deputy Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Noel Constable, standing in for Member Petrus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will then go straight into the speakers.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and once again, thank you, colleagues. Good morning. Chair, please excuse if my voice disappears. I'm recovering from flu. But Chair, it's an honor to engage on the 2024-2025 annual report, as it brings to an end of our formal reporting for the period from 2020 to 2021 to 2024-2025 on the activities and the performance of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Chairperson, while the new 5-year strategic period presents an exciting opportunity to usher in innovation and ambitious programs in the execution of our work, we are mindful of the core values that drive us and the expectation that the Constitution places on us as lawmakers. Chair, we also should not forget that as members, we are accountable to our constituents and the people of the Western Cape on whose behalf we serve. Chairperson, the details of our activities during the reporting period are in the report, and the Secretary and the team are ready to field questions from members in this regard. Honourable Chair and members, the Deputy Speaker and I are fully committed to ensuring that our members are adequately equipped to fulfil their functions and, importantly, become actively involved and, in fact, drive the conceptualization and design of policy around the execution of the core functions of our institution. To this end, Chairperson, the Western Cape Provincial Parliament Administration, under the leadership of Ms. Rashida Beg, is ready to fully support our members in an enabling capacity. The WCPP has a proud history of prudent financial management and governance and a 12th consecutive clean audit from the AG bears testament to our endeavours in that space. Chair, I wish to take this opportunity to sincerely thank all our new and returning members from across the political divide for their support during the reporting period, as well as thank you to each and every staff member of the WCPP for their unwavering commitment to ensuring that the administration of the WCPP remains at the forefront of legislature support in the sector. Chair, it would also be remiss of me not to thank my office for getting us to this point under the leadership of Lorika Elliott. Thank you very much to the Speaker's office for your support. Chair, we look forward to the engagement with the members and we're ready to field the questions, and I officially table the annual report for deliberation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and on behalf of all of us, congratulations to the entire WCPP on your 12th consecutive clean audit. And we do hope, Mr. Speaker, that you heal fast and you find your voice soon. We'll hand over to the Secretary.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honourable members, and thank you for the opportunity to present the annual report for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for the financial year 2024-2025. As Speaker has reflected, this has largely been a period that saw the culmination of a 5-year parliamentary term, as well as the inception of a new parliamentary term. And this transition is reflected in the work that the WCPP has done, led by its membership and also supported by the Parliamentary administration. And this annual report for 2024-25 captures this transformational journey from the previous parliamentary term to the inception of the new term. I would like to suggest that this management team is ready to account to this committee individually and collectively, and to take the responsibility for the work that was done by the WCPP during this financial year. Chairperson, as indicated, we have prepared a presentation which will provide an overview of the work of the WCPP, its performance and financial management. And with your permission, I'd like to ask Ms. Goldstone and Ms. Peterson to take us through that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary, and as well as to the Speaker. Colleagues, those of you who were here earlier would have seen we have guests in the gallery, and I'd like to formally, now that the leadership of Parliament is here, welcome the members of the community of one of our favorite places as the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. These are members of the public from the Central Karoo District, where we hosted the opening of Parliament last year. So 'n hartlike welkom aan almal van Lensburg. Ons is baie bly om vir julle hier te hê en baie dankie aan die agbare baans wat vir julle genooi het en wat oor die laaste paar weke seker gemaak het dat almal hier kan kom. Honorable Baans, thank you so much for making sure that even though we go to Lensburg and Beaufort West so often, not very often do we get to be able to bring members of those communities to the WCPP, because they are the furthest from the point of this Parliament. And as you all know, there's been a concerted effort to make sure that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament engages with communities, irrespective of where they are. So julle is almal baie welkom. Ons is bly dat julle hier is en ons sal seker maak dat daar tyd is vir 'n what's Afrikaans for a short break, where you are able to have a cup of coffee with the leadership of the WCPP as well as its members just before we conclude. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, we might have to work in a little break just before 10 o'clock, just to make sure that we're able to do that. I'm going to hand over to Ms. Goldstone for that short presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, honourable members, so this report is a high-level overview of our annual performance for the financial year 24-25, as contained in the annual report. Members, as per the Speaker and Accounting Officer forwards in Part A of the annual report, and as mentioned by the Speaker and the Secretary in their opening remarks, the year 24-25 was a transition year from the 6th to the 7th parliamentary term. It also marked the conclusion of the 5-year strategic period, which started in 2020-2021. In this slide, we also just highlight some of the key achievements which are listed in those forwards. The major achievements for the current year are our APP performance, where we achieved 86% of our targets for the year, which is the highest we had achieved over the 5-year period. In year 1 of the 5-year term, we achieved 74%, so that's more than a 10% increase over the 5 years. We also make mention of the clean audit which we achieved in the year, which was our 12th consecutive clean audit for the WCPP. And then finally, Chair, we also make mention of the strategic planning process, which, as members of the committee would be aware, involved quite an extensive process, which we undertook in 24-25 to develop a new strategic plan for the 7th parliamentary term. The legislative framework, so this slide just affirms that the annual report was prepared in line with sections 59 and 60 of the FAMPLA, which is the applicable legislation for the legislative sector, which set out clear responsibilities for the accounting officer and the executive authority, respectively, in terms of both the tabling of the annual report as well as referral of the annual report to the oversight mechanism, being the POC. Chairperson, onto the strategic overview. So this section just reaffirms our constitutional mandate. It describes the vision, mission, and core values that guided our work over the 6th Parliament. And members will see, next slide please, members will see on the vision, that it was to be the leading regional parliament rooted in Africa, innovative, relevant, forward-looking, and in touch with all its people. And that applied for the 6th Parliament into the 7th Parliament. Our vision has shifted to be a leading parliament that seeks to deepen democracy in the Western Cape. It also reflects on the strategic priorities introduced by the Speaker in the 6th Parliament and which we are carrying forward into the 7th Parliament. And maybe just to reflect on those priorities briefly, the first priority for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament in the 6th Parliament was to build a credible WCPP. And here our focus was really on ensuring that the WCPP can be viewed as an institution that has integrity, that values good governance, and that is conscious of its reputation in the broader governance ecosystem, expanding citizen service. This is about ensuring that the WCPP remains in touch with the people and responsive to the needs and interests of people, strengthening the core business. This is essentially about ensuring that the business of the house is also responsive and represents the interests of the people of the Western Cape, and that through our committee system, we are able to give effect of the priorities of the people. Strengthening support to legislators. This is essentially about how we ensure that elected representatives who are members of this house are supported with enabling facilities, capacitation, etc., and then improving the morale of employees. So to enable all of the above, it would be important to ensure that we have a workforce that is motivated and inspired to contribute to the broader vision of deepening democracy in the province. Chair, on to what is part B of the annual report, which is our performance overview. So I'll highlight just key aspects of our non-financial performance here. In the financial year, we had 22 program performance indicators and targets, of which 19 were achieved and 3 were not met, and we'll speak to the underachievements shortly. This slide just shows the breakdown of the 4 programs under that we have as the WCPP. Program 1 being governance, leadership, and administration. Program 2, parliamentary support services. Program 3, public engagement, and Program 4, member support. And you will see from the slide that the 3 targets that were not met were in Program 1, governance, leadership, and administration. The next couple of slides. So this slide shows the quarterly performance for the year 24-25. And what we will see is that in each of the quarters, we were able to sustain performance above an 80% level. The next few slides show just the breakdown of the performance for each of those 4 programs. So in Program 1, governance, leadership, and administration, we have so 6 of the 9 targets for Program 1 were met, which is 67%. 100% or all of the obligations that FAMPLA requires of the executive authority and the accounting officer in terms of reporting, etc., and oversight were met in the year. Member satisfaction, which we assess through an annual member survey, exceeded the target of 80%. And we achieved 87% satisfaction in the year, which is also the highest that we've achieved over the 5 years. Still under Program 1, we had targeted to implement certain strategic initiatives under 3 of our key functional programs. The IT digitization strategy, the HR strategy, and the knowledge management strategy. And we've achieved 100% of the planned initiatives for the year under each of those strategies. So under IT, some of the initiatives included work on the enterprise resource planning, some cybersecurity enhancements, and further work on the intranet. Under the HR initiatives, we had initiated a process around a culture journey for the WCPP, and we had concluded a culture audit in the year and started the work on developing a culture strategy for the WCPP in 24-25. Under knowledge management, Work was undertaken on developing an electronic registry and also further inputs into the intranet. Chairperson, now onto the 3 targets in Program 1 that were not met. The first was the percentage of planned APP program performance indicators achieved, where I've already reported 19 were met and 3 were not. The other one was the percentage of follow-up internal audit actions completed. And maybe just to explain this, so we achieved 50% of what was planned. So what happens is that in year arising from internal audits of the WCPP in respective areas, management would then agree to implement certain remedial actions to address any weaknesses identified through the audit. Of the 18 actions that were identified, 9 were completed by the deadline that management had agreed to, and the remainder was still outstanding at the time of assessment. And the 3 actions or the 3 areas in which those actions emanated were in the area of business continuity, cybersecurity, and social media engagement. However, by now, all actions have since been implemented, so we have in fact addressed all those areas that required remediation. The third target that was not met, still under Program 1, was the percentage compliance with the Critical Infrastructure and Protection Act, where we achieved 98% compliance. This is an assessment also done annually by the National Key Points Office that assesses our compliance with legislation. And over the last few years, we've managed to achieve in the higher 90%, so in the region of 96, 97, 98%, never quite 100%. And the areas identified in the 24-25 years for improvement include issues around perimeter protection of the WCPP, access control and egress control, as well as CCTV equipment. There's some issues around the continuous training that is provided for SAPS officials with regard to utilization of that equipment. Then under Program 2, Parliamentary Support Services, all targets were met for the year. The annual digest of rulings was published. 100% or all of our House resolutions and committee decisions were tracked as planned. All committee reports were indeed produced in accordance with the standard operating procedures, and all House papers were made electronically available. Chairperson, Program 3 under public engagement. So all targets were met as well in terms of both of the sub-programs under this program. Perhaps just to home in on one of the items, 3.3.1, which is it's very small on the screen, but it's the number of public education initiatives implemented. We will see there's a significant overachievement where we had planned to conduct 24 public education initiatives, but actually achieved 61 in the year. And the reason for this is basically an increase in activity in the parliamentary program in the year 24-25. Being an election year, there was high demand for education workshops to support the run-up to the general elections, as well as our State of the Province address and official opening of the 7th Parliament. We also received many requests from members in the year to provide assistance with regard to education workshops in communities as we transitioned, as we closed off the financial year. Chairperson, Program 4, finally, member support, where we had successfully implemented initiatives under all of the 4 categories. So the target of 4 is 4 categories of professional development opportunities that were provided to members. And they included postgraduate training, short courses, internal training, and so on. And all of those were met in line with the strategy. Chair, the next couple of slides just give a very high-level overview of the governance and human resource sections in the annual report. So you'll see it's just one slide, although the sections are quite a bit more expansive. So under governance, what we indicate here is simply that there is a governance model in place that is comprised of a layered model integrating internal control, external assurance, and strategic oversight. We also recognize the assurance provided by various external assurance provided, internal audit, the shared audit committee, and the POC, as well as our internal governance structure called GovCom. We also, again, highlight the major governance achievement for the WCPP being the clean audit. Key measures, governance measures, which we have instituted to promote ethical governance and minimize conflicts of interest include annual disclosures of financial interest, security vetting of staff, private work approvals, gifts and donations, management or the declaration of those. And so this is just a snapshot of what members will find in the governance section, part C of the annual report. Part D of the annual report, people management. Again, here we've just pulled out some of the key trends. In 2024, we had a vacancy rate of just over 9%. We also highlight the staff exits. So in the year, we had 3 resignations, 1 retirement, and 12 contract completions, so exits. And then 9 employees were recognized who had 10 years of service. Skills development, slight improvement, well, quite a significant improvement in the number of employees trained in the year. So up from 25 trained in 23-24 to 99 in the 24-25 year. 4 employees received formal study assistance. And then we also highlight some of our strategic initiatives in the people management space, which include, as I mentioned before, the culture audit and culture strategy. We also are undertaking an organizational design exercise, and the conceptualization of that commenced in 24-25. So that will look at how we can improve our structural alignment in terms of the way that the administration is organized to better respond and to meet our constitutional obligations and to respond to the strategy. We also had retained a wellness service provider in the year and we partnered with them to provide ongoing employee mental health and wellness support. And then our Sage 300 system rollout has been a major initiative which has supported us in modernizing our back office operations. And those, I think, are essentially the initiatives for people management. I think the next couple of slides go into the financial overview and then I will wrap up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I just want to confirm that we do have language interpretation services with Kamshahmat. Is it confirmed? So members, you'll note that the WCPP is very inclusive. So we've got sign language on the screen on Teams. But there is also language translation available for everybody in the chambers. I don't know which channels, but you can just flip through. It's normally 1, 2, and 3 that will have both English, it's Afrikaans to English to Afrikaans, and then English to isiXhosa as well. So you just flip through it if you need it. We're now going to move to the financial overview, and I think Ms. You're doing that. There we go.
Thank you, Chair. Just also a very high-level summary of what is included in terms of the financial overview. The slide just speaks to our 203 million budget and how it's divided between the 4 programs of the WCPP. This excludes direct charges. Moving on, this is our revenue or our receipts, which makes up a very small percentage of our total budget. Our sources of revenue are parking paid by staff, sales of meals to members, interest earned on our bank account, and then any return of unspent funds if we sell any of our assets in terms of our asset policy. We also have some sales of corporate gifts in our boutique. And then when we recoup any debt, it is also reflected under receipts. This then breaks up our budget and the actual expenditure in the 4 programs and depicts 23-24 versus 24-25. We did have an underspend during the year under review. And per program, we speak to the percentage spent as well as the rand value of the underspend in each of the 4 programs. Next slide just speaks to the expenditure in terms of economic classification, where the previous slide just spoke to how it was divided between the 4 programs within the WCPP. This speaks to what we actually spent the money on: compensation of employees, goods and services, transfers, and then capital expenditure. We also here detail the percentage spent in terms of all of those classifications, and we go into a little bit of detail in terms of what contributed to the underspend in those classifications. Next slide specifically speaks to compensation of employees, and these are the posts that we had budgeted for that we didn't fill from the start of the financial year, or not even at all during the financial year, under review. And then we've just spoken to what has happened subsequently. So we had an officer in strategy and organizational performance that was filled in this year, 1st of August. We had a senior officer in people management that was filled in May of this year. We had 2 posts in ITDS, or Information Technology and Digital Services. They've looked at sort of a different model to utilize those funds and to fulfill the need that exists there. The manager plenary support was vacant during the year under review, and it was filled on the 1st of September. And a public education and outreach officer, that post was filled in August of this year. Our underspending of goods and services, these are just high-level explanations of what contributed to that, because it was a transitional year from the 6th to the 7th Parliament. We had less committee activity than expected. Also, we do have an underspend on the enabling allowances that members utilised. That is a little bit beyond our control in that it's demand-based, so we make provision for it, but the expenditure is dependent on how members utilise it. The SAPS security services, we have made provision for that. That's where SAPS provides services at external events. And that was less than what we had budgeted for. Also, how SAPS claims from the WCPP is longer than expected. So for some things that might have happened in the previous year, they'll only claim in this financial year. We had an expenditure review planned in 24-25. We commenced work on it, but the actual expenditure will only occur in 25-26. We are quite far along with that project, and probably by the end of the calendar year, some expenditure will take place in terms of that. Our legal fees was less than what we budgeted for, as well as bursaries, as well as recruitment costs, and our training expenditure was also less than anticipated. We had some plans in terms of upgrade of our SAGE system, which is underway, but expenditure in terms of completing that project will only happen in the 25-26 year. And then interpreting services was reduced due to plenary and committee activity being less due to the transition from 6th to 7th Parliament, as well as the Hansard translations, a similar explanation there. In transfers and subsidies, the underspend there was mainly due to when we budget for constituency allowance, it happens sort of in the year before. What we do is we confirm what is provided for it at national parliament, and that actually only happens within the year when the expenditure occurs. So then we bring it in line with what national parliament is, and what they had was less than what we had anticipated in when we were setting the budget up. And then in capital assets, there's an underspend there, mainly due to the audiovisual upgrade that is planned for the WCPP in both the chamber and the committee rooms. Work has commenced on that, and that expenditure will happen within this financial year.
Thank you, Chair. And then the last section just summarizes. So while we're focusing on 24-25 in terms of the annual report, what we also reflect on in the annual report is what were the sort of key achievements or trends over the 5-year period. And so just to remind the House that the 6th parliamentary term was actually went past a COVID period. It feels like very far away now, but we managed to successfully transverse the COVID period as the WCPP with minimal disruption and fairly good business continuity over that period. We've made significant strides in terms of digital transformation, especially in terms of our back office functions and our ability to have constant live streaming of sittings, etc. We initiated work on the IT modernization of our facilities in the previous term. So a lot of the conceptualization and design work was undertaken then, with the plan that we would roll out those activities in the current term, starting actually from this year, late this year. We strengthened our cybersecurity posture also in light of global events around cybersecurity, but also the incident that we experienced as the WCPP, which we fortunately managed to overcome with minimal impact on our operations and impact on our systems and information. We also managed to expand our reach in terms of public participation, especially through digital platforms, and we've greatly enhanced our social media presence. However, for us over the period, and which continues to be a pressing point, is a key constraint around our capacity, and in particular our human resource capacity to continue to support members, to continue to support the public and citizens as we execute our constitutional mandate. And Chair, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must say I was not expecting a second annual report, but we move on. But it's a very good comprehensive overview, and especially for the benefit of the colleagues in the members in the gallery, as well as all the new members who joined the WCPP in the 7th Parliament. Colleagues, just in terms of housekeeping, we are going to ask some questions, and I've broken the questions down into the sections. So we'll deal with section part A, that's pages 10 to 30. I'm not going to confine you to a specific page, and I'm not going to ask you to ask questions on specific pages, but we are going to break at 9:45 for a cup of tea, and then we will come back at 10, and we will continue with the rest of the meeting. So are there any questions based on the presentation that was given, as well as the general information section, part A? That's pages 10 to 30 in the annual report, and that deals with both the general information as well as the leadership messages that was just given to us by the speaker. Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, through you, it is very commendable for the way how this Parliament has been managed by the executive, and the unqualified with no material findings outcomes are proof of that. And Chairperson, my question is based on page 20, which is our vision and mission statements. Now, Chairperson, those statements are very bold. And my question, Chairperson, apart from our own experiences in terms of when we submit evaluations and other measures that we use to indicate that we are happy with how things are being done. My question, Chairperson, what other tools are being used at a peer level where we can compare ourselves based on the statement to be the best in the region, to be the best in Africa? Now, we do see on the news how other parliaments are run, and it's not commendable. There are speakers who are having cars which we are not even aware of, just as an example. So at that level.
Member Boyson, just in terms of time, if you can confirm your, if you can just to our Parliament and our annual report, and our year under review, because I do want that question to be answered before we break, because we don't want to disjointed ones. If you can just conclude by asking your question.
What tools are being used to measure that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll hand over to the Speaker or the Secretary or any delegated official.
Right, let me thank you for that question. Yes, it is very bold. The reality of the matter is that when we say that we want to be the best regional parliament, we actually mean it. So if you the strategic plan has been set up in such a way that we don't forget our core constitutional mandates, but that is included in the broader spectrum of how do we reach those objectives. So in this financial year, we're going out to engage our stakeholders with a survey, because it's pointless speaking to one another as members or as the administration, but not getting the input from the citizens that we are representing in this parliament. So that's the first step, that we are going to directly engage with the citizens, and they will have an opportunity through a survey to indicate their experience of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. That will then get taken in, and based on what we receive from them, will then obviously be how we will amend our plans going forward. But Chair, it's not just for the first time that we have done that. The strategic plan for the next 5 years, which I'm very proud of, has been put together not only by the administration, but by external stakeholders that plays a significant role in the functioning of WCPP. So we've engaged thought leaders, we've engaged external stakeholders, we've engaged members, because as I always say, that Parliament is unlike a government department. Parliament belongs to all political parties represented in the House. So we've taken a bold step to no longer just engage one another, putting together a strategic plan for the institution. And then obviously with our engagements with our international partners, we've always benchmarked the WCPP on that level. I mean, and Member Boyson raised it. We're not competing with other provinces, because I mean our achievements have already been set. It's an international benchmarking, but ultimately, Jay, is to execute our core constitutional mandates of lawmaking, oversight of the executive, and public participation to the best ability. Now, and I don't want to get into that discussion because I'm sure that will come up later. But if you speak, we are focusing on modernization and digitization. But how are we going to use that and the new digital divide to also ensure that those three core constitutional mandates are being achieved without leaving anyone behind? And how do you find that balance to ensure that although we want to modernize and digitize Parliament, but that we don't leave the most rural parts, die mense van Maritzburg en die Sentraal Karoo, that we don't leave them behind. But yeah, Jay, that's in a nutshell how we put together the plan and the achievements. I'm not sure if the Secretary wants to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Honourable Boyson, for the question. I know that Speaker says that we don't compete with our counterparts in terms of provincial legislatures, but there's always an opportunity to do benchmarking, particularly through the structured organisation of provincial legislatures in the Legislative Sector Support Programme. That program does allow for collaboration with parliaments on the continent. So there's also an opportunity created there to do comparisons in terms of practices and procedures where we can always learn and adapt our own practices. I'm going to make a bold statement and I'm going to test it with my colleagues as secretaries of the provincial legislatures, but I think the WCPP is the only regional parliament that has concluded the CPA benchmark for democratic parliaments. And that serves as a useful tool to assess our current practices and procedures, both from an administrative side, but also in terms of core business. How do we fare against other parliaments across the globe in terms of our institutional processes and procedures? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know I said we're going to break at 10:45, but I'm going to give the next short question and short answer to Honourable Barnes, and then we'll break. If Honourable Barnes has a question, I saw her, she made eyes at me earlier, so I assume that was a question. So, Honourable Barnes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, with your indulgence, I know we have agreed on a break, but with your indulgence, if I'm allowed to ask my questions from page 10 up until 30, as I've asked permission earlier, and then I'm leaving the meeting, if I may be allowed to do that.
I'll have to test whether the speaker is prepared to write down all your questions, because all your questions won't be answered now before the break. But can I perhaps ask that if you ask it, and if it's written down, it will. So I don't. You'll
follow online.
Follow online. Okay. Are we happy with Honourable Barnes asking all of her questions and the colleagues in the WCPP just making notes of those questions? And any questions that we don't get to, Honourable Barnes will submit to me in writing, and I will make sure that it is answered as well. So you're going to ask
Just
all
for
of them
this
now?
section, Chair.
Just for this section,
Just
okay.
for this section.
So you're the chief whip of the opposition party. I'm very scared of you, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, I think I marked down my important questions. I'm just gonna pose 4 questions for this section. Before I do so, Chair, I must say today for me, it's a very happy day to be asking questions. If you were not going to allow me to speak the 4, you would just break my mood. That is very happy. Chair, I think the delegation that is here today from Maritzburg and Laingsburg, it's a dream coming true for me coming from a rural area. And I think normally I would come and sit in this committee with a very sore heart, where you feel that the Western Cape is not represented to its fullest. But I must thank the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and management on this side for when we make our issues and raise our issues here, actually that they are not falling on deaf ears. At times, one is feeling as an opposition, you are just becoming useless, but they have demonstrated on this round that Parliament indeed is for everyone, and it must be commended in that spirit. For us, when we continue to give critique, it's in the interest of having a healthy and a progressive Parliament moving forward. Chair, on that note, let me start with my first question. My first question will be on paragraph 4 on page 10. On page 10, the speaker speaks about the result of the WCPP that has received a clean audit, I think, which we have asked earlier on from the AG. Chair, the speaker highlights continued clean audits and institutional credibility. I think now we have changed clean audit into another name, which is unqualified. But whatsoever, while we welcome this, I would like to understand, how does this audit outcomes translate into improved institutional accountability? Also, measurable oversight impact and envisaged by South African legislative sector oversight models. That's my first question. My second question, Chair, would be on page 13, the table on top. Combined performance program, performance and strategic objectives is targets achieved. There, Chair, what I would want to understand is what are the details of this performance and the strategic objective targets that were not achieved? What are the plans to improve performance on these areas, especially for programs 1 and 2, where overall performance is 73 and 75 respectively? And then, Chair, on page 14, paragraph 2, in support of organizational transformation. Chair, what exactly is meant by this culture audit, and how is it different from the functional enhancement that was undertaken in the 5th and 6th administration? What was it ever fully implemented? What are the current updates, and has the functional enhancement now been closed? How much did it cost, and which service provider was contracted? And then, Chair, my question before the last one would be on page 14, Chair, the second last paragraph. Under 31st March 2025, the WCPP had staff complement of 107 employees. How does this staff number complement compared to the 5th and 6th administration? And what has been the impact of such changes to staff complement? Secondly, what is the arrangement between the reception staff and the public engagement support staff? Because currently we are seeing some of them sitting even at reception area. What is the arrangement of that? Are they redundant, or don't they have anything to do? Why are they now at the reception? Because when you enter, you see some of them sitting there. Now, Chair, on the last one, which is on page 21, I think I've also heard now from the report from the speaker and where comparisons were made between Gauteng. Page 21, that speaks under the strategic priorities outlined below the WCPP's institutional focus. The question there, Chair, is how does the current funding model of the WCPP influence achievement of the strategic priorities? In one of these meetings, I think the speaker previously spoke of the comparison of Gauteng and other legislatures, what was done, what steps are being taken or can be taken for WCPP to reach a level and financial independence and efficiency, including exploring possibility of receiving funds directly from National Treasury rather than through Provincial Treasury, which remains accountable to the legislature. I think that will be my 4 questions for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Barnes. And as always, you are very organized. I know you have prepared those. So can I ask also, Ms. Kamish Ahmad and I tried to take as many notes. Are you also just able to email those to us as well so that we make sure that they are encapsulated and if there's any questions later? Colleagues, as agreed, we're going to take a short break. It's now 9:52. Can we please be back in the chambers at 10:15? And then the speaker and the leadership team will then start responding to some of those questions. And then I'm sure by then all the other members will also have questions. So we will be back here at 10:15. Please help yourself to a cup of coffee. I think there might be some verversings as well, if you need something to eat as well, in the members' lounge. And I'm sure the speaker and Honourable Barnes would be happy to join the delegation from Laingsburg outside in the lobby just for a photo if the speaker and the deputy speaker and the secretary is okay with that. Honourable Barnes, are you happy with that? The speaker will arrange for the WCPP's photographer to just take a quick photo of you guys so we can put it in our annual report as a committee to say that Laingsburg was here. Sonder Antipoppy. Oh, sorry, Maritzburg. There's a big difference because it's quite far. So look, those of you upstairs, if you could make your way just down the stairs, as julle af van die trap afkom, as julle regs draai en dan weer links, daar's 'n lobby. Ons gaan gou 'n foto vat met die speaker. Colleagues, thank you very much for being on time. There was no need for me to ring the bell. I always like doing that because I can pretend that I'm one of the procedural officers that sit here in the front assisting the speaker. We are still on part A, pages 10 to 30, dealing with general information as well as the leadership messages. Can I ask, are there any other members that have any questions? I'm going to, the speaker's indulgence, just also add to some of the questions that Member Barnes have asked. I think some of our questions are similar. The speaker highlighted quite sort of rightly the 86% achievement of the performance indicated, and that it's the highest in the 5-year period, which is quite good if we're coming to the end of a term and you're starting a new term. And it's quite significant also that we've been able to manage the transition into a new parliament so seamlessly and effectively. And I think all members joining can attest to the fact that many members who joined from other legislatures or councils were very impressed by the transition, specifically the efficiency, as well as the quality of support provided, not just in terms of human support, but also in terms of the resources available to members. I think some member, I think it was Member Bryant, who said he was shocked that his office was so nicely set up. And there was another member who did a whole TikTok arrival with the opening of the door, and she was shocked that her face and her photos from her previous office was already in her office as well. So we're very grateful for that. I want to just latch on to the question that Honourable Barnes asked around the 86% performance achievements. How do you reconcile the high-level success with the specific underperformance in Program 1, specifically? In governance, it's 67%, and then the low achievement of the strategic objectives in Program 2, parliamentary support, sort of 33%. Sort of what's being done there to ensure that the core functions do not lag behind in sort of above the overall average? That's the first question from my side. And the second question, I've sort of just spoken about the transition to the 7th Parliament. What are some of the primary lessons learned from the onboarding of the new members? And how has that feedback informed changes to the support services in the new term? And then also just, Speaker, if you could perhaps broadly reflect, because you have a very unique perspective, because you came from the backbenchers, you went to the executive, both you and the Deputy Speaker, and you then also went into sort of managing and directing Parliament. If you could also specifically reflect on what some of your observations have been in answering Honourable Barnes's questions, specifically around the funding model and how the WCPP is one of the smallest parliaments in terms of size of members, size of operations, and also size of budget. And maybe just share some insights on what it is that we need to do as legislators to ensure that we, A, guarantee the sustainability and the independence of the WCPP, but also we use our influence as members of Parliament who approve the budget that is given from the Western Cape government through the national budget to the WCPP. What is it that sort of we can do to aid Parliament as well in getting a bigger share of the budget to be able to secure that sustainability of Parliament? That will then be the questions for Section A. I'm sure this between the Speaker and the Secretary, you would staff out those questions quite effectively. Thanks very much.
Chairperson, I'm going to direct some of the questions. There was a question that Honourable Barnes asked around page 13, targeted chief. Ms. Goldstone will cover that question. Then the question around the culture audit and how this differs from functional enhancement. Mr. Titus will address that question. I know that question also relates to the cost and who the service provider was that provided or supported the functional enhancement, and that may be before the time of some of my colleagues that will respond. With your permission, if I know it's in 2018, 2019, we may want to offer a written response there. Around the question on page 14, staff complement, and how this compares with the 5th and the 6th administration. I'm going to ask Mr. Titus to venture respond, but it also may be before his time, and we would want to offer a written response. Ms. Fisher will address the issue around the allocation of staff to the reception. And then there was a question, particularly, and it covers one of your questions around how does the current funding model speak to the achievement of strategic priorities. Ms. Goldstone will address the issue around target setting for strategic priorities, but just to address the matter around funding model, and this is a matter that is faced not only by WCPP, but I think the legislative sector as a whole has largely taken the stance that we are required to oversee the executive, and we rather get a small portion of the budget, which does not necessarily enable us to effectively oversee the executive. In a very recent meeting, we did a comparison of the allocation to the WCPP vis-a-vis the total provincial budget, and it represents in the current financial year 0.24% of the provincial budget. And then there is an expectation that this membership has to oversee the executive effectively. The discussion at the sector level is to look at a funding model. It's a target that I was responsible for in my previous lifetime at National Parliament, to look at the adequate funding of legislators as a whole, both from an administrative perspective, but also the membership in terms of the tripartite roles that they play both in constituency in the chamber, as well as in committees. So there is work that's being done with the Financial Fiscal Commission to look at the funding model for Parliament and provincial legislators. What we have done as a WCPP, and it is a current target in the APP, is to do a spending review, particularly around our core mandates, lawmaking, oversight, and public participation, and particularly to look at the costing of those mandates and to see whether we are adequately funded. I think, Chief, of your question is what is it that legislators can do to secure the sustainability of the WCPP? There are different programs at a sector level where there's a look at a sector bill to regulate the sector, both from an administrative perspective, but it will have overflows in terms of support that's being provided to members. So support in that regard. There's other fora that's also been created in terms of chair of chairs fora, where we particularly look at funding that's being provided for committees. And I know that Deputy Speaker participates in those activities, and I think there's an opportunity to look at how do we effectively enable committees to exercise the core mandates of the institution, so that participation and also support for increased budget is important. But I'm going to say the rider is that we spend what we have. And I think the picture that emanates from this annual report is that there has been underspending, and we've reflected on that underspending, and it is something that the administration will focus on in this financial year and going forward. Thank you. Chairperson, if you'll allow my colleagues to respond. In no particular order.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to respond to the question from Member Barnes on the table on page 13 of the annual report, the strategic objectives, the non-achievements. So the second column of that table talks about program performance indicators, and that was dealt with in quite some detail by the director in the presentation. And then the third column talks specifically about strategic objective targets achieved. So the strategic objectives were set for the 5-year period. And what is measured here is the achievement of the 5th year, or the 2024-25 targets. So here we had 3 non-achievements. One in program 1, where the strategic objective was about maintaining a conducive working environment, and the target specifically was the compliance with the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. And so that was already dealt with in the presentation, where we achieved 98% compliance. In program 2, over the 5 years, we were using the annual members survey as a tool to measure
improvement in certain service areas within parliamentary support services, specifically timelines and quality of certain services in plenary committees and Hansard. And here we didn't achieve 2 out of the 3 targets for the year, so improvement in one specific area within committee support services and one specific area within Hansard support services. And those would then be the 3 non-achievements in terms of the strategic objectives. The details of that would be in the performance tables on pages 69 and 70 of the annual report. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, thank you very much. The question from the Honourable Barnes around the difference between the functional enhancement exercise as well as the organizational audit. These are 2 distinctly different exercises that have been conducted. Let me just speak about the functional enhancement now. In 2019, signaled the implementation of the function enhancement process. There was a study conducted by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, that looked at a full assessment of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament and looked to what extent the staff establishment and the various roles are assisting the organisation in effecting its strategic mandate, the mandates of oversight, lawmaking and public engagement. Prior to 2019, the staff establishment was 108 posts. I think that was one of the questions that the member asked. And part of the new establishment looked at 118 posts, which included the registrar. I think one of the things that we need to be saying is that the thinking at the time, apart from the actual posts itself, was linking posts to the organizational strategy and future fit requirements such as digitization and digitalization that has been part of the thinking. The audit that we started looking at last year, the organizational audit there, really looked to see to what extent the organizational culture and the values that we have are living in support of the overall organizational strategy of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. To what extent our people, our integration, the platforms that we are using, etc., to what extent those are, and our propensity for change in the organization is actually happening, and where are the bottlenecks and where are the challenges that we are experiencing. And I think that was what the culture audit or the organizational audit included last year. There's obviously still work to be done because the culture implementation is a more medium to long-term implementation of getting alignment between personal behaviors in the organization and overall organizational behaviors aligned to the strategic direction that we are taking. There was furthermore a question on the cost. I've already spoken to the company, which is PwC. The actual cost we can provide again to the committee of what that exercise costed. I'm talking about function enhancement. Members would also know that within this year, in the APP for the current year, there's also a relook at what other further enhancements are required in terms of organizational strategy and our organizational functions. And I think this is something that I think Ms. Goldstone had raised a little bit earlier. Then there was a question, Chair, on the reception staff and what the arrangements are there. We know that it's not only in that particular area where the actual post requirements have shifted due to the new model that we have. We know that within the context of COVID-19 and our move away to a hybrid service delivery model, certain jobs or certain particular functions had not become completely obsolete, but had to change. And I think what we have through engagements with the various staff in various units had begun was a conversation along with some of the union members as well as representatives and the line management, to look at to what extent we are able to repurpose those the skill sets of individuals in this space, as well as looking to include that as part of the overall organizational development study that will happen within the course of this year. So it's not only within that space that has happened. I think there are a number of posts in the organization that have been affected by our shift to a hybrid service delivery model, both remote and in person. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may, there was a question by Honourable Bonds around the staff complement of 107 as reflected on page 14. And how does this compare with the 5th and 6th Parliament? I would suggest that we provide a written response to that question with your permission. Then there was a question around what were the primary lessons from onboarding and how is this feedback influence the support services? Vernon, are you going to take that question? Thanks.
So I think one of the questions was, what are the lessons learned from the onboarding process? I think one of the things that we have learned in the last round is that that we've got to be a lot more flexible as an administration. I think we have anticipated that our induction program will be running in a particular way, and that did not necessarily happen in that way. So it does open up, especially in the area of capacity building, other particular avenues for us to be reconsidering to what extent we can use our own internal tools and platforms. I'm talking about the intranet maybe, and other platforms for ongoing onboarding opportunities for members, so that induction and onboarding is not just an event, but that those become completely integrated with lifelong learning within the organization, so that when new members arrive, they have access to all of the packs, all of the information, and that the learning process is not an event. So that ties in. I think that is one of the bigger lessons for us. I think, Chair, there may be other lessons as well, but in my directorate, I think that has been one of the major things that we've learned from that particular process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't note any outstanding ones, but Ms. Kamish Ahmed and I are also making notes of which questions will be responded to in writing. And we appreciate that the Secretary is going to send those in writings. I don't think there's a need to provide the answer to the cost of the functional enhancement. We have those answers. They're both available on the PMG website as well as on the WCPP website if you can find them. But we've got them in the minutes as well because we've received those responses to previous questions. We've got Ms. Kamish Ahmed is very capable and competent when it comes to technology. So we've got a Parliamentary Oversight Committee online folder with all of the information there. And members, if you do not have access to any of the documents today, just to remind you, the link is in your emails on the SharePoint. All the documents for today's meeting is available under the 29th October meeting documents. That includes all of the reports as well as the minutes and our oversight reports as well. Those of you interested in the WCPP, you can follow our SharePoint site and you can see whether the documents that you've submitted is available to members there as well. I'm sure Ms. Kamish Ahmed hasn't restricted access yet. We might ask her at some point to do that. Colleagues, we're going to move on with your indulgence. We're going to move to part B, which deals with the performance information. Just for the benefit of those members of the public, this section deals with the performance of the WCPP and how the WCPP has been able to perform in terms of meeting its targets. I'm going to ask members, are there any questions on this sections? This is on pages 33 and 90. I'm not sure, Ms. Kamish Ahmed, do we have copies of the annual report available to, if any of the members of the public would like to take one with them? Are we able to just arrange for copies if there are any left over in the building so that the visitors from Maritzburg dat hulle 'n boekie saam kan vat en dit na die biblioteek toe kan vat of seker maak dat dit gedeel word met al die organisasies in Maritzburg. We'd appreciate that because to send something to Maritzburg means we have to send it with Honorable Barnes or the Speaker very often, or with Honorable Boyson, who's also based in that side. So, colleagues, questions on Part B, pages 33 and to 90. Honorable Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, my question is based on page 53, member satisfaction. Member satisfaction is standing at 87%. Now, my question, Chairperson, is on what is that based? Because I'm going to make an example of myself. I'm struggling with enabling allowances claims, and that is due to some of my level of understanding computers. But then when I fill in a questionnaire, I fill in there that I'm happy. And in the meanwhile, it is not the fault of the section. It's my own fault. Now, my question is, are these percentages based on number of complaints received, regardless of who's at fault? Or is it number of complaints which are genuine when you follow up on my complaint to find out that it was out of my own doing? Thank you, Chair.
It's a very bold admission. I'm not going to editorialize on that, but I was thinking exactly the same thing when I looked at the member satisfaction. I've always tried to answer based on my experience, so you can trust that the information that you receive from me is truthful and it's my real experience, but it's an actual concern that we all have because when people call you or people send you a survey, you want to give the answer that you think they want to hear. And we, as politicians, we deal with voters. And very often, if a voter wants you to leave them alone, they will tell you, yes, 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 I like you. But they will chase you away at another time if you come again. I also just wanted to latch on to that question, to that section. Under Program 1, again, sort of, this, I'm going to zoom in specifically on sort of something that I've been sort of quite passionate about since I started here. So we're saying that's only 67% of the performance targets have been met, which is the lowest of all programs. So specifically, the targets for follow-up on some of the internal audit actions that have been recommended around compliance, specifically with the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, were missed, something that I noticed. Maybe if the Speaker, through you, the WCPP can explain the reasons for the significant sort of underperformance in that specifically. Because we know through the various engagements we've had as a committee with the WCPP that there are challenges with how the precinct is managed, because we are tenants in a building that is not owned by the WCPP, and there are dependencies that is outside of the control of the WCPP, and the WCPP is quite heavily dependent on the Department of Infrastructure for facility and facility management, and the WCPP is quite heavily dependent on the South African Police Service in terms of the legislation around the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, and then also the WCPP is in the CBD next to a whole lot of other government buildings where there are issues around how do you define a precinct and how do you meet the legislative compliance of that act. So maybe we can just sort of talk about what are some of the remedial actions that have been put in place to fix that. I know the Secretary briefly elaborated in our last meeting on some of the core things that are being done. But just for the benefit of the new members and members of the public, if you can maybe explain that challenge. And then I'm going to take a liberty and also just latch it onto a response that Mr. Titus gave around the staffing, something that sort of have concerned me quite a lot whenever I come to the WCPP is the picture and what we present. Because as soon as people walk in, nobody understands that this is called the Provincial Administration Building. They see this as the Western Cape Legislature, because we are the most prominent face, and the WCPP pays for the reception area at the bottom at the 7 Wells Street side. Is there a conversation with the South African Police Service on how police officers manning a national key point in an institution like Parliament should be presented? Because when we visit other parliaments around the world, whether it is in Barbados, whether it is in Tanzania, whether it is in Wales or in the UK, police are all in ceremonial dress unless there's a security threat. And is there an understanding from SAPS that when people are at Parliament, they need to be dressed in a specific way? And the question is not just for sort of WCPP specific, but it's also when you go to the National Assembly. It is shocking, sort of the picture that the public gets, because the first interaction is with a police officer. And we know the nature of being sort of in a post-conflict society. We don't have the best relationship with the South African Police Service. So if someone is looking combat ready when you arrive at the WCPP, sort of what picture does that create? And is there scope in terms of our relationship with the South African Police Service to ask them for the police officers to be dressed in sort of their ceremonial clothing instead of being sort of combat ready? I think they might be a lot more comfortable as well.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the question from Honourable Boyson around the 87% member satisfaction and the admission of and developmental areas. We accept that that members are at different, and so with staff too, are at different levels of development and mastery on particular areas. And when we send out the members' satisfaction survey, and I think here the point is whatever the rationale is from a member's perspective. I mean, a perception, and it's a perception survey, and perception is truth. And as an administration, we've got to unpack what that means. So members would know that apart from the actual scoring, there are also comments and reasons that particular participants in the satisfaction survey provide. Now, some of these are related to knowledge of particular areas of work. For instance, someone may not necessarily, as a new member, be aware of the dearth of all of the information that is available in the library services and information services, for instance. And so the lack of knowledge on that part may result in somebody saying, look, I've never been supported. I don't know what that is. And so we do unpack that a lot more earnestly to actually identify what the actual challenges are. So it's not only at face value, but having said that, we take that we take the comment from the member. So we do actually try to unpack a lot further than just the scoring. Then the Chief Whip asked the question, Chair, you asked the question around reasons for significant underperformance. I wasn't quite sure whether that referred to the security question on page 60. Sorry, SIPA. So the on page 60 we do have the details of why we had scored a little bit lower. Also, just to say to members, the 98% that has been achieved in this space, and we know that there are areas for improvement. Some of those, the 98% as we speak is the highest in the country at the moment. But having said that, it is compliance with SEPA, and that has to be 100%. And so that will still represent an underperformance. I think the one thing that we are looking, and the Chief Whip, you asked the lead, what are we doing about this, and how is this being addressed? So there are a number of ways that we are dealing with this. It is true that we are leveraging off the responsibilities of the South African Police Services, that we have arrangements with the Department of Infrastructure, as well as a service level agreement with Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety. Part of this, including the other members of the other tenants in the building, these matters that are raised here are consistently discussed in the Joint Planning Committee that consists of all of the tenants in the building, as well as the service providers to safety within the context of the WCPP, as well as disaster management, etc. So these matters are being discussed there. At an operational level, this is further discussed with SAPS on a regular basis around performance of staff in that space, the understaffing of police in that area, and how we can maximize the effectiveness of the South African Police Services within the WCPP as a precinct of Parliament. Then the further question was around the dress code of the South African Police. This too has been discussed at various levels, including with the Brigadier. There is a different approach that the police have pertaining to uniform. This is also something that we can discuss further within the JPC, but there's definitely space for that discussion to be taken further. I think that is all from my side. Thank you.
Chairperson, if you allow me, Honourable Boyson, when we ask members to complete the member satisfaction survey, it will assist us if you share with us the concerns that you've highlighted, because that's the only way as an administration that we will get a true reflection of the members' experience of the service. So we are aware of that there are certain challenges around the system. And I know this is current here, but solutions that we are proposing is that there be a direct engagement with individual members to highlight what are those concerns, whether they are systems concerns or process concerns. So we really want members to assist us to identify what the challenges are so that we can propose solutions. But giving us a good score when your experience is not good is not going to assist us in addressing the concerns. Chair, you also raised a question around the 67% performance target, particularly the 50% on internal audit actions. This is something that's been raised with management. I think Ms. Goldstone did indicate earlier that we closed the 9 actions that were outstanding, but these internal audit actions are now being followed up on a monthly basis to ensure that we do not lapse. I think the message to the team has largely been, if we don't manage our internal controls, we are not managing our risks. And that's why it's important for managers to ensure that we are able to address these. Fortunately, we are sitting at a 100% rate. In Q1 of this year, we have reported on a 93% with only 1 outstanding, and that 1 outstanding matter largely pertained to an external service provider. That matter has been resolved. The issue around the SEPA compliance, I must say, compared to other institutions, the 98% is fairly high, considering that we're sharing a building with other tenants. The key issues highlighted there was perimeter protection, and there is the installation of further security cameras to address that. We have scheduled the training, the CCTV training for SAPS personnel, and that's something that is monitored at the JPC level. I think our biggest concern is the access and egress control in terms of roles and responsibility between SAPS and WCPP, and this is something that we want to close off at the end of this financial year in terms of a firm arrangement with SAPS around that. So those were the 3 issues that form the 2% non-achievement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I think I just want to make a comment on Honourable Boyson's question, and I think I don't want to rehash what has already been said. But I think the reality of the matter is if we don't get from members a true or their true experience, then we assume that everything is in or the environment is enabling or enabled for a member to perform their functions. Now, if you go back to page 10, which is something that I feel really strongly about, is the five strategic priorities from when I took office as the speaker 2.5 years ago, is to strengthen the support to legislators. We are elected as members to represent the citizen, and it is the duty of Parliament to enable a member, regardless of background or ability, to empower that member to be the best member of Parliament to represent their constituents. And I made it in my opening remarks that it's all good and well to modernize and digitize, but that we leave people behind in the process. And I'm very mindful that not all members are able to as fast as or as the digitization and modernization happens, that not all members are able to move with that implementation. For that reason, I think the Secretary has touched on it, that the individual members and the administration, that communication continuously needs to happen in order for us not to leave any member behind. Because I can say this on record, the last thing that the administration wants or is doing is to frustrate members. I want to categorically state that perception is not true, and all the team sitting here is here to enhance or the ability for a member to perform, because ultimately all of us, including the administration, has ultimately got a responsibility to the citizen, to deliver to the citizen. And I think it's important that we, between the members and the administration, that we work together to achieve and iron out those issues, if there is any. Thank you.
Thank you much. One of the things that I pick up, sort of parliamentary support services, sort of 100% of the targets were met, but only 1 of 3 strategic objective targets was achieved. What I'm picking up from that when I'm interpreting is that there's a mismatch between sort of tasks are being completed on a daily basis, but the long-term strategic sort of improvements are falling behind, the way I understand that. Sort of what are some of the specific actions being taken to bridge the gap between sort of the operational output and strategic impact? I'm not sure if that makes sense. The speaker looks very confused. Sorry?
I'm not following you.
So in program 2, parliamentary support services, 100% of the program targets were met, but only one of the, so 33% of the strategic objective targets were achieved. Sort of, so is it, what I'm reading is sort of we're able to sort of do the administrative tasks, and we're able to do the work, and the sort of the machine keeps churning and members are getting everything that they need. But how are we linking the day-to-day activities to the strategic objectives? If that, I'm not sure if I'm slightly clearer there.
So I think the reality of the matter is, Chair, that ultimately the strategic priorities of Parliament is outlined, and in order for parliamentary support services to embed those, it is a relationship between the work of Parliament, i.e. members and standing committees, and the work of the administration. The administration can only produce what Parliament and by extension the committees produce. So it's a collaboration. So the administration and the day-to-day will function, but the strategic impact comes from the workings of Parliament.
Thank you very much. I don't see any hands, which is a good thing. I must say the annual report, the way it's presented and the layout of the information, the visual, the branding, as well as the quality of the paper, it is the best annual report that I've read of the WCPP since I've been here. I'm very impressed by sort of the visual layout, the clarity of information, as well as all the beautiful photos in here as well, because we've included sort of a good balance of all of that. And members, you're also able to write on the page. It's not as glossy as some of the other departmental annual reports. We're going to move on to part C, which deals.
Chair, if I may, maybe one day before we leave, we'll have digital annual reports, and then you'll be able to write on your tablet.
I'm not sure about you, Honourable Speaker, but we already have it. And some of us are using both the paper one and the digital one. My device is very capable of, there's a little pin that pops out and you can write on it. It's not as responsive as I'd like it to be. That's why I use Mac, but that's my own peculiarities. But I don't want to ever get to a world where we only have digital annual reports, because that will mean it's the death of the library. And I don't want to kill the library. We still need books. Colleagues, we're going over to governance, pages 93 to 116. Are there any questions? That information is very clear. I see no hands. Part D, people management, pages 119 to 142. Maybe if I could start off. Last year, we as a committee raised concerns around employee morale. So this year's report shows that a staff turnover rate of about 15%, if I'm not mistaken, 15%. Has the culture journey helped with staff morale? And sort of beyond the culture audit, what are some of the primary reasons being cited in exit interviews for the sort of turnover? As many of you on this side of the room and on the left-hand side of the room know, the legislative support sector, the legislative sector is quite a specialized area. And if you're losing people at 15%, it means they're either being poached, which I suspect is the case, because they get paid more at other parliaments, or it's to do with sort of people wanting upward career progression, which in terms of the WCPP's policies is quite difficult, because the policy does not make provision for promotion internally. So how is the WCPP planning to deal with that? Because the report highlights that as a risk, because you're going to lose people with institutional memory and with institutional knowledge, and you're going to lose people who are able to provide the background that innovation and improvement need. So how is that being managed? And what is the plan in place to ensure that when we come back next year on the 29th of October, that I don't have to ask the same question, and perhaps the WCPP would have employed a different strategy to deal with it, besides employing AI agents? How are we sort of dealing with the people aspect, and so making sure that sort of the people that work here still feel valued and still feel that this is a place that they can grow?
Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Titus just to deal with the turnover rate and the reasons for exit interviews. This is information that I've requested, that I've received, that I'm going through, and maybe just also to address the culture journey, and I will deal with the latter part of the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I specifically want to refer to page 129. That is table 264, the reasons for staff turnover. And I think, Chair, the data that is there perhaps just has to be disaggregated. If you have a look, you'll see that there are 3 individuals or 3 staff members who had resigned from the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. These staff members have all left for other positions outside even of the sector. So it's not necessarily individuals who had been poached, but it's career opportunities that they obviously could not let go. And I think here the context also for us to understand within the people management space is that in the world of work, And with the manner in which we are working now, people do not stay very, very long in a situation. I think in the workplace, I think the Western Cape Provincial Parliament is quite an anomaly where we have a lot of long-standing individuals in the organization. The chief, the chairperson is correct also to say that we've got a very flat structure and very little opportunity for people also to move in their career path within the WCPP, which makes it also lucrative for people who are ambitious to move into other spaces where their skill sets could be valuable. We see that not only within providing a service to the WCPP, but further services to South Africa as a whole. But I want to continue on that end of contract in the reasons for the staff turnover, because that 12 individuals there is what is actually skewing the picture and creating a 15.2% turnover. Members would remember that we had moved from a 6th Parliament into a 7th Parliament, and all of the staff in the Office of the Speaker all had to exit. So all of those particular individuals, as well as at the end of this period, also the secretary to the Provincial Parliament, as well as 4 contract individuals that we've appointed to do backlog work in the records management space. So those are all contracted positions. In the Office of the Speaker, all of the individuals, barring 1 or 2, all of those posts were refilled or filled in the 7th Parliament in the year as well. So you have an exit of 7 people and an onboarding of a further 7 people in the Office of the Speaker. And I think that is what skews that picture. Does not mean that we are not concerned about the overall risk and the sustainability of how to manage our retention within the WCPP and how to work on the morale and the resilience of employees within the WCPP. That is an ongoing project. That is not something that has a start and an end date, chairperson. And so from our exit interviews, people have raised a number of issues. Some of those issues and all of the exit interviews up until a particular point we have already provided to the POC. But some of those issues deal with change management that is not managed appropriately, the lack of change initiatives in the organization. There may be issues such as silo mentality and lack of integration within the administration. And here and there are issues of discontent where individuals are discontent with particular manner in which our policies are, for instance, implemented, and citing inconsistent implementation of policies across particular units. But as I say, the POC has already been apprised with a full gambit of the exit interviews. We can provide further updates as far as that is concerned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Titus. Mr. Titus, maybe I wasn't quite clear in how I framed it. So my question is, what is being done differently to ensure that people stay? Because yes, people leave, but people don't only leave because they're unhappy with what they earn. The people who work in this building, in my experience, has been that they're committed public servants. And if committed public servants work in an environment that is encouraging and that helps them see how they link to the broader strategy of not just the institutional direction of the WCPP, but where we're moving as a province and as a country. The fact that the WCPP has long-standing service, and the secretary invited me to one of the long-standing ceremonies recently, where people have been here for a long time, not because they sort of only want to work here. It's because they enjoy their work, they see value in what they do, they make a link between how what they do improves their communities. So we've read the exit interviews, we understand. So my question broadly, I think, is what is being done differently to change the silo mentality, to change the lack of integration, to change the inconsistent implementation of policies, if that's what the staff is telling us, this is the reason why they're leaving. Because the majority of the staff that exited, in my recollection of those reports, are people who joined the administration newly. It's not all long-standing employees. So that raises questions to me in terms of sort of when people come in from the outside, what is it that they see? Because a sort of a vacancy rate of 9% sort of can strain an organization like the WCPP because it's a small organization. So sort of maybe some insights into what is being done differently and what are we going to, maybe I'm asking for a preview of what we're going to read next year. I'm trying to jump ahead in terms of post-legislative scrutiny so that by the time you write the annual report for next year, sort of the story is already different and we can start bragging about that even in the middle of the year as well.
Thanks.
If I may, I did say I'm going to take the latter part of the question, so I'll leave Mr. Titus with the response. The culture journey largely highlighted a number of gaps, and I think we must start with the gaps. First of all was the lack of trust and collaboration, where staff felt there's a prevailing sense of distrust between management and staff. Also communication gaps in terms of regular communications, in terms of what's happening in the institution. Also leadership style in the institution, rather autocratic and very focused on compliance. Which gives the institution a sense of we ticking all the right boxes, but we're not necessarily dealing with the people management issues effectively. And then we do see a sense of fragmentation and siloed teams where everybody works as individual experts in their spaces, but very little opportunity being created for collaboration. And also the nature of the organization that we work in, it's a highly charged political environment, and how do we manage that and assist our staff to traverse those political challenges that they may experience. So the exercise that we have done, the institution did with work dynamics in the previous financial year, also highlighted a plan of action, largely focusing on leadership development, prioritizing emotional intelligence, team building, inclusive decision making. So what are we doing differently about this is to ensure that we have regular engagements with staff at different levels. So there is a standard staff meeting, which takes place quarterly, but we are encouraging management to regularly engage with staff so that there is communication of what is happening in the organization. Through communication, hopefully to break down some of the silos and misinterpretation overall in the institution. So enhancing internal communication is a key focus for the institution, and that we use different channels, either through the intranet, through regular meetings, but also sharing information of keeping staff apprised of what's happening in the institution. To empower and recognize employees, you attended one of those sessions, but I think rather through policy and clear policy provisions, that we are able to highlight what are the do's and don'ts in the organization, and that there's a common understanding. So policy reviews is something that we have fallen behind as an institution. We have ever prioritized it. So there's a project plan around bringing all policies up to date and to ensure that there's a consultative process, both with organized labours and including staff who are not necessarily represented through organized labour. So that policy review is currently in a planning phase. We've identified a need to review the policy framework. But we've also addressed this in our quarterly engagements with the organized labour that we have. Policy alignment, understanding what the policies are, ensuring that there's a common understanding across the institution. And through that policy review, also looking at our performance rewards, that we don't necessarily just link it to your annual cycle, but that there are other opportunities to recognize trailblazers in the organization, those who have innovated in their respective areas, but also to have that clan culture inculcated in the organization where we move forward together as a team and not as individual sections and directorates. I think one of the issues that you have highlighted is the fact that the institution does not have a promotion policy, but we have identified the need for a succession plan for the institution. I think you will see on one of the tables under people management that we are faced with an aging workforce with a lot of knowledge and skills sitting in the grey matter that we have around, sitting maybe on this side of the house, and that there's a need for us to share the knowledge and information that sits within the heads on the side of the house, with a younger, newer crew, but also with staff that are interested in learning more about the organization. So largely the focus is improving communication overall in the institution, having greater collaboration between different line functions, and all of those that support the core mandates. And here we're not just talking about committees and plenaries. ICT plays a role, people management plays a role. Similarly, public education, we all support the core mandates of the institution. So we would really want to break down this silo idea of that everything happens in core and not in the other areas. So that is work in progress, and hopefully we'll have a better story to tell when we come back.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. I wasn't going to use the word old and grey. I think people look tired because the WCPP staff work very hard. So if someone does look a bit old and grey, and I'm looking at the back over there in the corner, I think they're just a little bit tired. Mr. Let me not pick on the newly appointed people, but a former legal advisor that's now moved into a different role doesn't look tired. He looks energized and refreshed. Mr. Sassman also looks energized and refreshed, just a little bit more tired than he was a year ago. But I do understand that it's not just a WCPP issue as well. It's an issue that we're going to be facing in other legislatures. And I like and I'm encouraged that we're making space for different ways of operating, and that we're listening to what the institutional memory, which is our people, are saying to us. Members, we are moving on to Part E, financial information, pages 145 to 204. Honourable Boyson.
Chair, I think you were going to come back on the second round on what we're currently on.
You were too slow, so we've moved on to Part E. Financial information, part 145 to 204.
Christian style. You're doing it, member, Christian style.
No, I'm doing a WCPP efficient style. We've got a lot to get through. We still have committee businesses as well. Members on pages 145 to 204, dealing with the financial information. Everybody happy there? I have to invent a new section because we're running ahead of schedule. We're going to then move on to the public part of our meeting. We do give an opportunity for any members of the public who'd like to ask any questions of clarity based on the year in review. I've only received one. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, did we receive any more? No, we've only received one request to ask a question. We generally try and limit members to sort of asking very specific short questions. So I'm going to ask Mr. Adams, the former secretary of the WCPP. You've said you'd like to ask a question or make an input. If we can contain that to 3 minutes, Mr. Adams, I'd appreciate that.
Sorry, Chick, just a question of clarity. Are the questions from the members of the public directed to us as members or to the officials?
The questions are generally in terms of if there's any questions on what's contained in the report, and the questions are asked to us in the committee. I will then give an opportunity for the executive authority and the WCPP to respond to those questions because those questions are being asked in public. And if there's a need to give detailed written questions, the administration through the speaker will submit those responses to us as the committee. And those the responses are either shared directly with the person or the organizations who asked the question. And it's also contained in our annual report, which is most of our reports are also included in this document as well. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Mr. Adams, your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the honourable members. I'm just going to run through a list of referencing with regards to where the question and the comment comes from. Firstly, page 29, page 38, paragraph 3.6, page 126, the tables in 2.4, page 127, table 261, page 152, page 167, speaking to financial liabilities, page 178, the paragraph numbered 1.25, paragraph 1 or page 191 related to the government employees pension fund, page 193, and then page 198, and the heading there specifically refers to pension payout of the outgoing secretary. Chairperson and honourable members, the report also reflects that my employment contract or the employment contract of the former secretary had concluded on the 31st of March 2025. In the next 2 days, it being the 31st of October 2025, I would have exited the employment of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament 7 months ago. To date, I have not received a pension payout. Okay. I'm not going to necessarily go into the details specifically. I just find it astonishing how this institution that is a bastion of our democracy, how they understand how a exiting secretary with commitments needs to continue living and covering his or her financial liabilities. 7 months. Even if the matter is resolved, it will probably take another 4 months for a payout to happen, bringing us to almost 12 months of no pension benefit. Chairperson and honourable members, my question is, how do we deal with this so that we conclude it? I have written various letters, various emails. This is my next level of escalation. I think at some stage we need to come to a head with this specific issue. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. The Secretary will respond.
Chairperson, the question of the Government Employee Pension Fund of the former secretary was referred to the Public Protector. We've received a formal notice from the Public Protector on the 22nd of October on this matter. It is a notice of a preliminary investigation regarding the concern that was raised. The notice also carries a caveat which says that in terms of provisions of Section 7.2 of the Public Protector Act, the contents of this notice are confidential. No person is allowed to disclose the content hereof without the authorization of the Public Protector, and any person that breaches the confidentiality shall be guilty of an offence which is punishable upon conviction with a fine not exceeding 40,000 or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 12 months. Or to both such fine and such imprisonment as contemplated in Section 11 of the Act. So, Chairperson, we're going to be guided by the committee as to whether a response on this platform is warranted based on the directive that we've received from the Public Protector that they are investigating this matter and that we are compelled to comply with the provisions of the Public Protector Act. So we'll be guided by the Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. I didn't expect sort of this type of specific sort of HR related question. I'm going to be guided by the law, and I'm going to recommend to my committee that we allow the Public Protector, Ms. Koleka, to complete or to start their processes, and that we don't interfere now. And Mr. Adams, with your permission, we will sort of, through our oversight work, get regular feedback from the WCPP on how that complaint to the Public Protector is being dealt with. I think it's only fair that we allow the processes to be completed, because I don't want to fall foul of the law, and I don't want anybody to compromise themselves legally by sharing information that may not be ready for a public consumption, because this is a public sort of forum. Our general practice in this parliament has been that when we deal with human resource information, we do not individualize that, because the relationship between an individual and their employer is a confidential one, just as a relationship between a member, although we are not employees, but there is sensitive financial information that's shared. So members, with your indulgence, that's my recommendation. I see Honourable Bryant.
Thanks, Chairperson. I think that's a very sensible recommendation. Whilst I understand and appreciate the issue being raised by Mr. Adams, I think we also potentially run the risk of maybe setting a precedent whereby this becomes an opportunity to raise individual HR matters with an expectation that as a committee, we will then follow up and conduct oversight on the progress with regards to individual HR matters, which I don't think falls within our purview, especially when we are dealing with the annual report. So I think your recommendation is certainly the correct one, and I think it can be dealt with that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I should take a little survey and ask, are you all happy to stay for the rest of our meeting, or can we move on to concluding remarks from the speaker and the secretary, and we can relieve you so that you can all go back to work, and the committee members can stay behind, or the speaker can indicate whether he's prepared to keep you all here for all of it, noting that you are able to follow the proceedings on YouTube if you'd like. But Mr. Speaker, whilst you make your concluding remarks, and if the Secretary would like to make some concluding remarks as well, perhaps the Secretary can go first. Please indicate if you'd like to stay, and we'll certainly accommodate you as part of our program.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the honourable members for the engagement. We'll take the lessons learned and some of the key messages that came out of this engagement, particularly around member support services. It is a particular focus in this financial year. There's a number of targets of the previous financial year that sets the groundwork for the current APP, and the team is very busy. Unfortunately, I keep them very busy to ensure that we are able to deliver on those targets, and not merely for the sake of ticking a box, but to make sure that they have tangible results in terms of supporting members, but also that we would want to improve the lived experiences of citizens. So we do appreciate this engagement. I know everybody sometimes is really scared to appear before Oversight Committee or before SCOPA. But it's part of our responsibility and our accountability, not only to this committee, but to our broader citizens that's also come to join us today to show that we are being held accountable and responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the committee for the engagement. I enjoy coming to this committee because it gives an opportunity to build together. So although we come an account, we are all members of this house and this institution. So I take the recommendations and the questioning as building together, because we have a responsibility, as I often remind members, to represent the citizens, and we can only do it if we build together. So thank you very much for the manner in which we could engage today. Thank you very much to the team and the secretary for the work that's being done. Chair, it would also be remiss of me not to thank Mr. Adams for his contribution in this annual report and for the contribution made to the institution, and as at the 31st of March, when the annual report was published. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ms. Beg, to you and the team, and to the citizens. Alipad van sover as Maritzburg, baie dankie. Ek hoop julle het dit geniet, en ek hoop nie dit is die laaste keer nie. It's baie lekker om julle hier te sien. Chair, thank you very much.
Baie dankie, agbare speaker, en ek wil ook vir saamstem en dankie te sê aan meneer Adams. This annual report reflects not just the work of everybody sitting here, but it also reflects a journey that we all took starting in 2019. So thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Adams, for also coming to this committee and demonstrating that we can still use the space for public engagement. And I hope that at our next public engagement, we'll have more members of the public. And next time, when Member Barnes invites the mense van Maritzburg, sal ons seker maak die spasie in die chambers vir julle. Because then it's also an opportunity for you to ask questions, and we'll make sure that the Public Education and Outreach Unit goes and gets some residents from Maritzburg, Beaufort West, Calitzdorp, and Ladysmith to actually come and participate beforehand as well. I think we'll follow the Scottish example of having, and the Welsh example of having residents come beforehand and engage with us as well. Speaker, Secretary, all of the WCPP, you are excused. Members, please stay put. Members, we're going to move on to just the adoption of our minutes from a meeting that took place on the 29th of August 2025. Ms. Kamish Ahmad is flighting those minutes. The first page deals with attendance. The second page deals with the meat of the meeting, which was a briefing on the Q1 report, both financial and non-financial. We also considered our committee report and adopted that. And then we adopted minutes of a previous meeting on the 5th of June. And we considered and adopted the draft committee program. And we took some resolutions. Members undertook to send requests for information or resolutions to the procedural officer by Wednesday, the 3rd of September, if they had any. Are there any objections to the minutes being adopted? May I have a proposer and a seconder for the adoption? I see the Honourable Bryant as the proposer and the Honourable Kazafilanda as the seconder. We'll now go to the next set of minutes, which is the meeting of the 10th of September. Again, the first page deals with attendance. The second page deals with the meat of the meeting, which was a walkabout, an inspection of the parliamentary precinct to assess security infrastructure, including the CCTV cameras, CCTV systems, and the evacuation routes. We then conducted a walkabout. We then received a detailed briefing by the WCPP Safety, Security, and Precinct Management on the security protocols and the critical infrastructure protection of the WCPP. We then resolved to compile a snag list to be submitted to the WCPP administration, and committee members were asked to submit their contribution to the snag list to the procedural officer, Ms. Kamish Ahmed, by the close of business on Monday, the 15th of September 2025. And then we agreed to schedule a confidential in-camera meeting with the relevant officials to discuss the specific security lists. You'll note from that meeting, it was not just the permanent members of this committee that was here, but also other members. To date, we've received no input from any member on the snag list. So perhaps that's something that we just need to look at. And if there are still snags, members will have another opportunity till this Friday, Ms. Kamish Ahmed says. Honourable Bryant?
Yeah, Chair, I think that's what I was going to suggest, and I must apologise because I was one of the people who wanted to submit some things, and I haven't gotten around to it, and I apologise for that. But I certainly will do my best to submit the points that stood out for me during that walkabout. I'm assuming that our in-camera meeting will be held next year. Yeah. Okay. So that'll be enough time.
Ms. Kamish Ahmed, with your indulgence, does the deadline have to be this Friday?
No. Members can decide.
So So if perhaps Ms. Kamish Ahmad will identify a suitable date for the next meeting and then identify what this date is so that we give the WCPP enough time to also respond in terms of notice. But Fridays are generally not a good day for deadlines, especially not for us because many of us go to the mosque as well. Members, any objections to the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of September being adopted? May I have a proposer and a seconder? We can't hear you, Honorable Philandra. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I propose the adoption.
Kaiser Philandra was fully present and online during the discussion, so she proposes, and I will second. So I was here, I think. And then we're now going to move to the draft committee report, the oversight report, which is the report dealing with the meat of the walkabout. So the first section of that report again just deals with the attendance, gives an introduction to why we did the briefing, then gives an overview of what we did. It outlines the key observations and findings, and then some of the recommendations. And the recommendations there is based on the observations and findings, the committee recommended that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament engage with the Department of Infrastructure and the City of Cape Town to resolve the management, security protocols, and legal responsibilities pertaining to the concourse area to ensure a secure perimeter, that the WCPP address the parking management issues, including ensuring reliable 24/7 access for members, reviewing the layout of parking bays to prevent vehicle damage, and finding a sustainable solution to the shortage of dedicated parking, that the committee expedite the finalization, that the WCPP, expedite the finalization and implementation of the comprehensive business continuity and emergency preparedness plan, including regular drills for all potential scenarios. So on top of the snag list, this is the 3 recommendations we're making now. And then we're going to have our in-camera committee meeting to discuss the snag list specifically, because we don't want the snag list and the security protocols to become public, because someone might kidnap Honorable Bryant.
Chair, I think the only thing that I might add to this, and I don't know, maybe if the committee would consider it, is also to evaluate the budgetary provision provided in order to remedy these situations. Because obviously we can make recommendations that all these things get fixed, but if the budget isn't considered for allocation at the next available opportunity, then many of these things aren't going to be resolved. I don't know if that's something we could factor in, or if that is just a fait accompli of making the resolution.
I think maybe what, from a process perspective, maybe what we should do is we should, when we have that in-camera discussion, as part of that meeting, we can ask details about the budget. Because for a lot of this, the costs are going to be quite specific. And it's going to impact what the proposed budget is for next year. So maybe we need to look at how do we do that, because they currently are in terms of the budget cycle, they're going into sort of the budget council session as part of what Provincial Treasury is doing. So perhaps we shouldn't wait till next year to discuss the snag list. Perhaps we'll need another meeting before next year to discuss the overall budget of the WCPP, so that if members want to give input into that should be a separate discussion. Because we can recommend that the WCPP ask for a bigger budget, but sort of they're already doing that in terms of asking for what they're budgeting for. So maybe Ms. Kamish Ahmed, you should guide me. Would the best course of action be that we ask for a specific session dealing with sort of
the funding,
the funding model?
Yeah.
So that could be a resolution as part of this meeting today. So we leave this as is, and then. So colleagues, we've got the recommendations. The next part deals with the resolutions, is that we are supposed to compile a detailed list of specific security concerns, our snag list, that members will have until Monday, the 15th of September, to submit their contribution to the snag list. Are we still happy with the 15th? Because we said Friday's not a good day. Is that enough time, or should we? So, Wasima, do we just want to edit the date there on the fly?
On the report.
No, on the snag list, because we're dealing with the resolutions.
This resolution is taken on the day, so we can't change it in the report, but we will update it in the minutes for today.
Okay, cool. Speaking so softly today, nobody's using the microphones. The people online can't hear us.
Yeah, well, I'm speaking to you and we must speak in my voice. Okay.
The next part of it is also that we submit the compiled snag list to the WCPP, that we schedule the in-camera meeting, that we intensify our oversight of the relevant departments, notably infrastructure and the Department of the Premier during the upcoming annual report cycle. And I do hope that colleagues who participated in the infrastructure and the Department of the Premier meetings did that. If not, we will make sure that it gets done. Are we happy to adopt this report? I have a proposer and a seconder.
I propose, Chairperson.
Seconder, Chair.
Thank you very much. Everybody's looking so tired. Can I propose, colleagues, that we don't deal with resolutions of this meeting today, and that you have until Monday the 15th to send your resolutions to Ms. Kamish Ahmad? Would that be in order? And if we don't get anything by Monday, close of business, we'll just go with our resolutions and we'll present it at the next meeting, or unless there's any specific resolutions.
It's not a specific resolution, Chair. It's just a query. Do we have another scheduled meeting before the end of the year? And we will table the proposed plan for next year. Is that?
You have adjustments.
Yeah.
So we have a meeting on the 8th of December. But I think what Honourable Bryant is asking is, earlier I suggested we schedule another meeting. No, not for the in-camera meeting, to have the discussion around the bigger issues.
No. I was just asking in terms of planning. So if we're going to make a resolution at some stage in terms of a proposal for something for the agenda for next year, whether that's going to be drafted between now and then, or if we can just send it through as you suggest, and that'll be incorporated.
I think we should have a meeting. The idea was that there was supposed to be a workshop scheduled on the 4th and the 5th. And all committee members who were supposed to participate in that workshop, and the outcomes of that workshop were supposed to guide us in terms of how we operate as committees. And POC was sort of going to be one of those. That did not happen. So the programming authority resolved to sort of postpone that workshop to next year. But in terms of our internal arrangements, because we're quite separate from the rest of the committees, we don't follow the same sort of process in terms of what we do, because it's quite specialized. I think we could benefit from a specific engagement. So maybe what I would then propose is that we look at scheduling a workshop with us as the POC members, and then we invite certain members of the WCPP executive, as well as the speaker and the deputy speaker, to that workshop, to give new members an opportunity to engage with the processes that needs to be followed, and also to be briefed on what the potential plans are for next year, so that members know what type of activities are planned, etc. So we don't have a committee meeting, but we have a workshop. And Ms. Kamish Ahmad can sort of identify through by engaging with the chairperson of the programming authority a suitable time where it's just the committee members, just the permanent members, and then one or two Maybe just the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and the Secretary and the CFO.
Do you want to happen this year?
Yes. We want it to happen before the 8th of December.
Before
Yes.
Great.
next week.
Yes. That we're an innovative and efficient parliament.
So, Chair, we will out to read out of it. I have it ready, that meeting, and we can adopt it. But we want to incorporate those resolutions that they will bring. So, whatever date we will have to incorporate it into this report.
Oh, she can't hear what's being said to me.
Chair. In the two of us.
Members, anything else from your side? Those of us still here? I just want to say thank you very much to Ms. Kamish Ahmad as well as Ms. Mashapela for the support provided in setting up this meeting. And also thank you to all the members as well for participating both online and in person. I know we normally schedule POC as the last, the annual reports. I will speak to the chairperson of the Programming Authority and we'll do better next year. But I really appreciate the participation. And also thank you to Ms. Kamish Ahmad for making sure that all of the details are in place and for making sure that we're always on top of the administration. I think we're the best run committee in Parliament. The meeting is thus adjourned.
Is there lunch? No.